The protagonist's reforms were not without their obstacles. Within the tribe, conflicts arose between different clans due to the rapid integration of new members. The Bear Clan and the Thorn Clan came to blows over the allocation of houses, exposing the underlying tensions within the tribe. The protagonist realized that the excessive power of the clans had become a hindrance to the tribe's unification. To address this issue, the protagonist cleverly used the opportunity of a census to break down clan boundaries and reorganize tribal members as individuals under the pretext of clarifying blood relationships and preventing close kin marriages. He even created catchy kinship songs to fundamentally eliminate clan consciousness and achieve true unity within the tribe. The protagonist's wisdom and determination will be further demonstrated in the following story. How will he deal with internal and external challenges? Where will the Han tribe go? Let's wait and see. 3 wooden boards were successively posted with 2 versions of nursery rhymes and a family lineage chart. But these clan leaders couldn't understand them. Most of them had only joined the Han tribe a few months ago, and the only characters they recognized were those you had previously disseminated through the form of commodities. Seeing their blank stares, you had no choice but to read it to them yourself, then explain the blood relationships to them one by one, referring to the diagram beside you. From ancestors to parents to peers, all the way down to descendants, you introduced them all. Afterward, you solemnly warned them that marriage between cousins on the mother's side was forbidden within 3 generations, and for cousins on the father's side it had to be more than 5 generations. Otherwise, there was a high probability of infertility, congenital intellectual disability, physical defects, malignant genetic diseases, and other adverse consequences, which surprised the crowd. Chief, I understand not being able to have children, and I understand physical disabilities, but what are congenital intellectual disability and genetic diseases? The clan leader of the Zong clan was the first to ask, and the other clan leaders nodded in agreement, indicating that they also wanted to know the answer. Congenital intellectual disability is easy to understand. It means being born a fool, unable to learn anything, even speaking or walking, or having a low mental age with the intelligence of the brain remaining at the level of a child, never learning adult things. This is also considered a disability, an intellectual disability. They are born only to waste food and require adults to take care of them, so we should try to avoid this. Otherwise, it will be a burden for any family to have such a child. You explained. However, the clan leaders below didn't think so. They didn't know if what you said about avoiding the birth of mentally disabled children through bloodlines would work, but they had all seen such congenitally disabled children and had even dealt with them personally. Wasting food, burdening adults, this was impossible. They wouldn't raise such disabled people to increase the burden on the tribe. In the past, in their own tribes, when such a situation occurred, they would either kill the infant as a sacrifice to pray for the forgiveness of the gods, or they would abandon it in the wilderness, leaving it to its fate. The chief actually wanted to raise them. It was truly. However, the Han tribe wasn't lacking food for 1 or 2 people, so they didn't object but instead asked about another issue. Chief, what is the last one? Genetic disease. Hey. When it comes to inheritance, this is the most magical part. You pointed to the relationships on the chart and continued to explain. Well, take the clan leader of the Zong clan, for example. You have a crease on your eyelid, which makes it look like it's double-layered. Then there is a high probability that the children your woman gives birth to will also have double-layered eyelids. This is called inheritance, and it is also a symbol of the continuation of bloodlines. And this is also the reason why I asked all clan members to live separately according to family units, because it is easier to distinguish blood relationships. Additionally, if the child's mother also has double eyelids, then the probability of the child having double eyelids is even greater. Of course, this is not absolute, just more likely. There is also a situation where the child doesn't look like the parents, but like the grandparents, or the child doesn't look like the parents, but the grandchildren look like you. This is called skipping generations in inheritance, or Gidai Yichuan. Moreover, this Gidai Yichuan can sometimes skip several generations, which is uncontrollable. But more or less, some characteristics of the parents will be inherited. Sometimes it's the appearance, sometimes it's the body shape. Even if you have a mole on a certain part of your body, the child may have a mole in the same place. However, although this kind of inheritance is a symbol of the continuation of bloodlines, it can also cause trouble. For example, if the parents have any disabilities, congenital deafness, which means the ears cannot hear sounds, or the mouth cannot speak, then the child may also inherit this disability. Even not only disabilities, but also serious diseases can be inherited. You know what serious diseases are, right? They are diseases that are very difficult to cure. This situation may not be noticeable in the first generation. It may become Gedai Yichuan, or it may remain hidden and not appear for many generations. But if it is close relative reproduction, then this serious disease of the elders is very likely to appear in the next generation. In general, close relative reproduction will turn recessive genes. Recessive inheritance into dominant inheritance, which means it can be seen. You wanted to say genes, but when you remembered that they wouldn't understand, you had to change your wording. Of course, although they don't understand now, the next generation may not. You have already planned to include the genetic inheritance from junior high school biology in the previous life into the teaching materials. This is also to popularize science to all clan members, so that they can recognize the dangers of close relative reproduction. Can you all understand what I've said? You looked at the crowd. Some had sudden realizations, some were puzzled, and some had expressions of admiration. You didn't know how much of this hardcore genetics they could understand. Yes, I understand. The chief is right. My children look very much like me. Some look like their mothers. And there is also what the chief just said, Gidai Yichuan, where they look very much like my deceased father. This should be the bloodline inheritance that the chief was talking about, said the clan leader of the Hu clan first. Yes, now that the Hu clan leader has said that, I also understand. I have a black spot on my arm, which is the mole that the chief mentioned. My child also has one in the same place on his arm. This inheritance is really strange, the Io clan leader added. Yes, this is inheritance, but inheritance doesn't choose between good and bad for you, only inheriting advantages and not disadvantages. If the parents or elders have diseases, they will also be passed down, and this situation occurs most frequently in close relative reproduction. So you all understand what I mean, right? You nodded and said to them, with these people giving personal examples, you believe they will quickly understand the relationships involved. Yes, Chief, we understand the relationships you've mentioned, but how can the newly adult clan members find spouses in the future and know if they are blood relatives? And now that there are so many people in our Han tribe, it's not easy to distinguish blood relationships, summarized the clan leader of the Chai clan. That's right, it's not easy to distinguish, which is why I called you here for this very purpose. I plan to have all the clan members learn to arrange their family generations and recognize their relatives before this winter, so that they can sort out their blood relationships themselves, because no one knows their parents and their children better than themselves. Then after the clan members have learned to arrange their generations, when there is nothing to do in winter, I will also organize a census of the entire tribe, register the identity of each person, and determine their blood relationships. You stated the ultimate goal of this meeting? All of them have to learn these Han characters? Isn't that too difficult? It's impossible for all the clan members to learn them before winter, right? The clan leaders all showed surprised expressions. Hey, of course it's possible because I said it and it will definitely happen. But you don't need to cooperate much in this aspect. I have other arrangements for you, you said with great confidence. What arrangements? Asked the clan leader of the Gu clan. Well, you also understood the census I just mentioned. But as you said, the Han tribe has so many people now. This matter definitely cannot be done by 1 or 2 people, and it must be someone who can write to record it. So I plan to gather a group of people and teach them to read and write in a unified way. In addition, our tribe has become too large, and it is no longer appropriate to manage it according to the tribe's method. So I plan to change the tribe into a country next year and establish unified national government institutions in various cities to manage the daily lives of the clan members. Okay, that's it. If you have any questions, you can ask them now, and I will answer them. You picked up a piece of cold mixed lotus root slices and said while eating. The clan leaders stared at each other, seemingly trying to digest what you had just said. There were too many new words in what you just said. It felt even more complicated than the bloodline inheritance you talked about before. Soon, someone started asking questions. Chief, do we clan leaders have to learn to write? The Sher clan leader was the first to ask. Not necessarily, this is not mandatory. If you want to learn, learn. If you don't want to learn, don't learn. But one point, those who cannot write will no longer be able to manage the clan members in the future and must accept the management of the government. In addition, it's not just you who will learn to write. We also need to call the elders, Wu, and their disciples, that is, the elder candidates from the previous tribes, to come and learn to read and write together, you answered. To be honest, you were very conflicted. You wanted the high-ranking members of these original tribes to join the new government, but you also didn't want them to. First of all, those who could become the leader, even if they were not the smartest, must be muscular and have explosive combat power. And those elders or Wu were even better among them. Most of them were good at management or holding sacrifices or drawing some murals for inheritance. In addition, there were their chosen successors, mostly the smartest of the new generation in the tribe, and these people also had great prestige in their tribes. Sending them to be officials would also be convincing, making them indeed the most suitable people for official positions. But the reason for your conflict was here. This group of the most useful talents were all high-ranking members of the previous tribes. If the new government was once occupied by these people, then relying on their prestige, it was very likely that the common people would only recognize the city lord and not know who the emperor was. To put it bluntly, this was not conducive to your centralized power. Therefore, if these people are willing to join, you are very welcome. But if they are not willing to join, that's fine. You will not force them. If you don't learn to write, you can't continue to manage the clan members. But why is that, Chief? Clan leader Tan seemed to feel that you were seizing the power that should belong to the clan leaders. He couldn't help but ask. It's very simple. The Han tribe now has 3 cities, and there will only be more and more such cities in the future. And I can't personally manage each city, so I can only communicate with the governments of each city through letters, and I can only issue new orders through letters. So if the person in charge of management doesn't recognize characters, how can they complete the orders I give? So I said just now, if you want to learn, learn. If you don't want to learn, it doesn't matter. Some people may not like managing these things. Some of you may like construction, some may like manufacturing and production, and some may like being a warrior. Everyone has different ideas. Even if you don't become a manager, you can still achieve something in other areas. I will not interfere with your choices. I can tell you in advance that there are more things to manage than just registering the identities of the clan members. Other things, such as land reclamation, farming, animal husbandry, construction, all. Tasks need to be completed by the government according to my orders, and they must be completed. If they are not completed, there will be punishments like today's, or even more severe. So you should all think carefully about whether you want to join or not. In addition, I do not exclude you from joining the government's management institutions. In fact, I welcome you to join. After all, you were the leaders of the tribes before, and you more or less have management experience. However, learning to read and write Han characters is a prerequisite for joining. Everyone is no exception. You spread your hands and explained to them. Hearing your words, clan leader Tan, who had just asked the question, stopped talking. The reason you gave was very sufficient, and he had no way to refute it. And as you said, maybe some people really don't want to participate in management. Who knows? Besides, you didn't prevent them from participating, you just required them to learn to write. Soon, someone raised a new question. Chief, if we want to be soldiers, do we also need to learn to write? This time it was clan leader Xiong, who had just been beaten, who asked the question. This burly man really didn't want to participate in any government management. Instead, he was very interested in the imposing equipment of the warriors. Hey, of course not. If you just want to be an ordinary soldier, it doesn't matter if you can't write Han characters. But if you want to be an officer, you still need to have basic reading and writing skills. Otherwise, how will you understand the orders given by your superiors? Don't you think so? You said with a smile. Oh, no wonder all those warriors can write Han characters. Clan leader Xiong muttered softly. Then, Chief, what did you mean by changing the tribe into a country? Clan leader Chai raised another important question. Well, that's a good question. Everyone understands what a tribe is, so I'll talk about the country. A country is also composed of a group of people. But compared to a tribe, a country has more people. And the place of residence is not just one, and it has a clear territory and sphere of influence. The supreme leader of the country is the emperor, the son of heaven, who is entrusted by heaven to manage the people on earth. You understand the people, right? You can understand them as many clans, and this emperor is similar to a tribal leader. All the clan members and affairs of the country are under the jurisdiction of the emperor. As for the residence, territory, and government matters I just mentioned, a country will have many citizens, so there will inevitably be many residences. We are now building cities, and there will be more in the future. Then there is the government. The government is composed of a group of managers, officials who manage specific areas on behalf of the emperor, such as the city lord, who can also be called a county magistrate, Xianling, who is in charge of all matters of a city. Then several cities will form a commandery, Jun, and the emperor will set up the position of a commandery governor, Junshou, who can directly govern several cities, including the city lord of each city. Do you understand what you said? Doesn't seem difficult to understand, but it's not something these primitive people can figure out in a short time. After waiting for a while, seeing that they didn't respond, you clapped your hands again to attract everyone's attention to yourself. It doesn't matter if you don't understand now. I will teach you slowly in future studies. What you need to do now is to think about your future life, whether to become a government manager or to do something else. After you go back, gather all the people I just mentioned, the previous elders or Wu of the tribe, and their cultivated next-generation successors, as well as those clan members who have served as leaders of gathering teams, hunting teams, or other small teams, regardless of gender, must be called to participate in learning. Finally, there's you. Those who want to come can come, and those who don't want to come can continue to do what they are doing now. Do you all understand? You instructed them. Yes. Chief, everyone answered in unison this time. Obviously, they also needed to think about it carefully, because this was a major life event. The country described by the chief was undoubtedly a very large existence. In their own eyes, the Han tribe, which now had 3 cities and a population of more than 20,000, was already a powerful tribe without any enemies. However, what did they hear from the chief? People. Beijing. Was this 100 clans? A country with countless cities and vast lands. What a great goal. How proud it would be if one could participate in this great construction. That would be much more interesting than the previous tribes composed of dozens or hundreds of clan members. Of course, there were also many people who wanted to participate in other jobs. But no matter what kind of work, it was an indispensable part of the process of developing the tribe into a country. That is to say, even if they were not in a management position, they could still participate in the construction of this great country. After the meal, the attending clan leaders took their leave. Only you and your 2 generals, 1 civil and 1 military, remained in the canopy. Dashu, tomorrow you write a letter to Hanyang City and ask them to prepare a batch of toys to send over. Leather balls, sandbags, get some of each, to give to the children here. Oh, and some more sugar paste, tang gao, cut into small pieces and put in jars. Shuda, starting tomorrow, you need to select a few literate warriors and set up several toy distribution points in and outside the city. Each distribution point must post nursery rhymes and blood relationship charts, and have the soldiers teach those children. To receive toys, you must first learn the nursery rhymes. Whoever can recite them and find the corresponding position on the relationship chart will be given toys. Those who learn it themselves will be rewarded with sandbags and sugar cubes, and those who teach others will be rewarded with leather balls and sugar cubes. If there are not enough sugar cubes, you can exchange them for something else. This is the temporary arrangement for now. In short, I want to make all clan members learn to identify relatives as quickly as possible. Do you all understand? You ordered? Yes, Chief. Chief, this is a really brilliant idea. I estimate that according to this method, it won't be long before the clan members learn it. Heh heh heh. You smiled and didn't speak. The idea you came up with, even if it didn't work, you had to shed tears and pretend, of course, you didn't think it wouldn't work. The next day, things got back on track. Having resolved the issue of clan infighting, you did not forget the reason you came here, which was to expand the scale of papermaking. Regardless of quality, first increase the output so that all houses can be fitted with oil paper windows before winter. This was the purpose of your visit. He already had some ideas about the large-scale production of paper. Next, he just needed to test the feasibility and then make some adjustments. Fortunately, the environmental resources here were uniquely advantageous, with an inexhaustible supply of pulp for him to use quickly, without having to soak the materials for half a year, like the ancient papermaking method, which saved the Han tribe a lot of time. The new papermaking workshop was built in the second city here. Because it did not need to accommodate many people, there was more open space here, and even the previous livestock pens were moved here. According to your idea, the new papermaking process has not changed much. Just a set of production tools has been replaced. Regarding this inspiration, it was generated based on modern papermaking methods, that is, how to produce continuous paper, and finally roll it into a long paper roll, and finally cut it to make it the size you want. You quickly drew the design of this production line on a piece of white paper, and then asked Dashu to call a group of craftsmen to start processing. First of all, there is a relatively large pulp pool, and then a wooden pillar is placed in the middle, which can also be seen as a bearing, with some curved wooden sticks inserted, horizontally as a stirrer, similar to an enlarged version of a dough mixer. The usage of this set of equipment is to pour the pulp and clean water into the pool, and then drive the stirrer to rotate through the transmission mechanism to disperse the mixture in the pool into a uniform pulp suitable for papermaking. This step alone can save a lot of time spent on the pulp. However, this is only the first step. Next is the papermaking process. In order to increase the speed of papermaking, it is necessary to change the original manual papermaking to mechanical papermaking. Your method is to install 2 small water wheels with buckets on both sides of the stirrer in the middle of the pulp pool. The water wheels do not need to be too large, with a diameter of more than 1 meter. Then they are connected to the stirrer through wooden transmission gears. In this way, while the stirrer is running, the water wheels will also rotate constantly, scooping out the evenly mixed pulp and pouring it onto the prepared bamboo screen to form the paper you want. After completing the papermaking step, there is the final drying process. This can also be solved. You directly asked people to build a 10-meter-long, thin-fire kong on one side of the pulp pool. In the position between the fire kong and the papermaking area, 2 wooden rollers were added. The bamboo screen with the paper pulp passes through the middle of the rollers. First, the rollers squeeze out a large amount of water, and then the bamboo screen is dragged onto the 10-meter-long fire kong to pass through slowly. The heat of the fire Kong quickly dries the paper. When the paper on the bamboo screen reaches the end of the fire Kong, the water content has been dried. Finally, a set of roller rocking frames is added at the end of the fire Kong to flatten the dried paper twice, and then roll it on a prefabricated empty shaft. In this way, as long as the raw materials can be continuously added to the pulp pool, the assembly line can produce a large roll of paper. However, this is only a theoretical design. It is obviously not so easy to turn this production line into reality, but with your personal guidance and experimentation, the progress should be faster. The development process of the production line was not as smooth as you expected, although the overall direction has not changed. After all, there are only a few steps in papermaking, but every detail has undergone n times of experiments and improvements. First, the shape of the stirrer, the number of horizontal forks, and even the speed of rotation. You don't want to stir it like a washing machine to form a vortex in the pool. You need to make the pulp and water fully and evenly mixed, and also keep the water surface in a relatively calm state. The stirrer in the first step alone took you 3 days to complete. Next is the water wheel, the diameter of the water wheel, the shape and size of the hopper, and the speed of the water wheel rotation. In order to achieve operability, a group of carpenters made at least 20 water wheels for this, and finally met your requirements. Of course, this process also took several days. Then there is the bamboo screen for receiving the paper, which can also be regarded as a conveyor belt made of bamboo. It is woven with very thin bamboo strips. For this reason, you also asked Dashu to send a first-generation loom from Hanyang City and transform it into a machine for weaving bamboo screens. The final bamboo conveyor belt is 30 meters long and can go around the fire Kung 1.5 times. However, this was not very smooth. The first problem encountered was that the pulp scooped out by the water wheel was not evenly poured on the bamboo screen, resulting in a lack of pulp or uneven thickness. In order to solve this problem, you added another water tank under the bamboo screen, using the water inside to completely spread the pulp evenly and spread it flat on the bamboo screen. However, difficulties were encountered again in the later stage of squeezing water and flattening the paper. You had no choice but to replace the pair of rollers in front of the fire Kong with several sets of rollers. The bamboo screen, from this step, will bring the flattened pulp into the roller group, first dehydrate, then flatten while it is still wet, and finally send it to the fire Kong for drying. However, this still cannot solve the problem. First, the bamboo screen is too hard. And second, if the paper and the bamboo screen are not separated during the drying process, they will stick together after drying. In order to overcome these problems, you first asked people to use hemp thread as the warp and bamboo strips as the weft to reweave a semi-soft and semi-hard conveyor belt, which was also much shorter than the original, only a little over 10 meters long. This hemp and bamboo blended product first receives the pulp poured by the water wheel in the water tank, then drains and enters the roller to dry the water, then enters the next group to be flattened. After, a separation device like a spatula, the semi-dry paper and the conveyor belt will be divided into 2 layers. The paper will go to the upper layer and pass through another set of flattening rollers, while the conveyor belt will go around from below to the water tank to continue receiving pulp, completing a cycle. The paper that has been rolled 3 times will come to the fire Kong at this time. In order to increase the drying speed of the paper, you also ask the carpenters to erect a wooden insulation box of the same length on the fire Kong, like a cover buckled on the fire Kong, to increase the temperature of the upper layer of the fire Kong and make the heat loss slower. At this point, it can basically be said that the paper has been formed. Finally, only a rocking frame is needed to roll up the paper, which is the least technical part. It was successful in one go, but this alone took a month to develop the entire production line. When you walked out of the workshop, you felt like a day in the cave, 1,000 years in the world. Immediately follow the data of this set of equipment and make 9 more identical production lines. The Han tribe needs a lot of paper, so you have to be fast, you said to Dashu, who was following you. Just then, a leather ball was kicked in front of you, making you look in the direction the ball was kicked. There was a child looking at you, timidly, seeming to want to come over to get the ball but not daring to. You smiled, raised your foot, and kicked the ball back, asking Dashu beside you. It seems that the method I said has worked. Children are already playing with the ball. Yes, I said at the beginning that the chief's idea was good. As expected, as the chief thought, these children have nothing to play with. Now that there are fun toys, who wouldn't want them? Father's father is called grandfather, yay yay. Father's mother is called grandmother, nai nai. The two were walking together when suddenly a group of children ran past, singing nursery rhymes. They held sandbags in their hands and chased a soccer ball, loving their new toys. At this time, there is no need for too much explanation. No amount of boasting is as real as the facts in front of you. How are those adults learning? You asked again. The adults have to work and don't have much time to study. But now that the children in the city are singing this nursery rhyme every day, they can't help but hear it. Even if they haven't learned it, they can remember it. Well, what did the chief call this wash? Brainwashing, see now, you reminded with a meaningful smile. Yes, 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 it's brainwashing, see now. The chief's brainwashing is amazing. I don't think it will take until autumn. All the clan members will have learned it, Dashu said, giving you a thumbs up, as if this was how the chief expressed amazing. Yes, I think it's almost there. Now that the paper production line is completed, the output of white paper in the Han tribe will definitely increase sharply. In this way, in addition to pasting windows, we can also use paper to do other things, such as registering the population and household registration. Without paper, there is no place to record. Fortunately, this problem is now solved. You couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief after completing this research and development task. At the same time, you were filled with a sense of accomplishment. The production equipment designed by the chief is also very powerful. Compared with the original, manual papermaking, manual dehydration, and manual drying, it is much faster. One production line only needs 6 people, and it can produce 3 large paper rolls as thick as water buckets in one day. It takes 3 or 4 strong men to move them. Chief, don't worry, I will definitely supervise them to complete the manufacturing of the new production line as soon as possible, Dashu couldn't help but promise. Well, you are reliable in your work. I feel relieved to leave it to you. Tell me about what's been going on recently. Is there anything new that I don't know about? The two strolled around the city while discussing recent events. During the time the chief was working on the production line, some more tribes joined the Han tribe. There is nothing else special, but there are 2 tribes that are really special. Oh? Tell me about it. One of them is a tribe we are familiar with. That is the Lu tribe that raises flower pigs, Huazu. I only found out a few days ago that their chief also brought people to work here. A few days ago, when they were about to go back, the chief of the Lu tribe, Ju, proposed to me to join the Han tribe and was willing to bring all the flower pigs. I agreed at that time, and considering the importance of the flower pigs, I also asked Shuda to send a team of warriors to accompany them, responsible for escorting and transporting. Speaking of business, Dashu immediately reported seriously. Oh, this is really good news. You did a good job. When they come back, you ask the chief of the Lu tribe to come and see me. By the way, what about the other special tribe? You were also very happy to hear this good news. The other one is really special. This is a tribe dominated by women. They are good at raising a kind of insect, collecting leaves to feed the insects, and when the insects grow up, they will form a white cotton ball. They will tear open the cotton ball to make clothes, and they can also eat the insects inside. It's really a strange tribe. Oh, by the way, they are named after the tree that the insects like to eat, called the Sang tribe. Raising insects, forming cotton balls, and making clothes, you said in surprise. Yes, they also eat insects. By the way, they want to join our Han tribe, but they are still hesitating. I don't know if I should agree, Dashu replied. Why? You asked in confusion. Their female chief said that they can join the Han tribe, but they cannot be prohibited from continuing to raise insects, and our tribe raises chickens, which will eat their insects. If these two problems cannot be solved, they cannot join the Han tribe, Dashu recalled. Insects are originally used to feed chickens, but it's okay to let people eat them occasionally. By the way, what do the men in their tribe usually do? The whole tribe can't rely on eating insects, right? How many insects are needed to feed people? You thought for a moment and said, their men also hunt. They use bows and arrows, and they also make traps, but they are all very ordinary weapons and they can't compare with ours, Dashu introduced. The men use bows and arrows to hunt, so the harvest should be good, right? How did they let women become the chief? You frowned and pondered. It was abnormal in primitive times. Whether men and women were hunting or gathering, the party with a more stable harvest would definitely dominate. This had no necessary connection with strength. So, what was the reason? They could neither plant nor raise large livestock, so how could they survive on insects? Well, I heard that they seem to worship an insect god, which is a god left by their ancestors, so this is also the reason why they say that they cannot stop raising insects even if they join the Han tribe. They also said that insects can bless their clan members, Dashu explained after thinking for a while. Oh, another case of worshipping what you eat? Pantheism is really widespread. You sighed inwardly. Are they still here? If they are, bring them to see me. I will try to find a way to keep them. I think their insects should be quite important to us. You asked Dashu. Oh, I'll go and see. If they are still here, I will bring them to see the chief. Dashu scratched his head and left, seemingly unable to understand how some insects could be useful to the tribe. But at this time, you fell into reflection. Silkworms. Sangkan. Why didn't you think of it earlier? This was a technology that existed since the time of the Yellow Emperor. It is said that after the animal skin clothing in the Yellow Emperor period, silkworms came next, even earlier than linen. After all, silk is inherently a mesh, and it is easier for humans to think of ways to use it than hemp fiber, which needs to be retted to be obtained. In addition, silkworms are not only sangkan. There should also be oak silkworms, likan, that like to eat walnut and chestnut leaves. The previous Li tribe had a natural forest there. Maybe there were many likan, but the Li tribe only knew how to eat chestnuts and did not light up. The technology tree of raising silkworms and making clothes. It was a pity, but you also have a responsibility. When you accepted the Li tribe, you didn't think of this at the time. It was not until now that a tribe raising Sangkan came to you that you remembered the matter of silk. But it cannot be said that this is wrong. After all, the practicality of silk in this era is not high, far less practical than animal skins and linen. And even in modern times, it is a luxury. From ancient times to the present, it has not been affordable for ordinary people. Only in mice and modern life, where life is better, can people buy a few pieces of silk clothes to wear. This is also the reason why you subconsciously did not think about it. Although it is expensive, there are also many benefits of raising Sangkan. First of all, it adds a kind of fiber that can be used for weaving. And silk can not only be used to weave silk fabrics, but also to make fishing lines, surgical sutures, and facial masks, etc. In addition, raising Sangkan can also form a supporting co-cultivation model with other poultry and livestock farming. For example, after the silkworms form cocoons, the silkworm pupae left over from silk reeling can be used to feed chickens or directly for human consumption. These silkworm pupae that have not yet metamorphosed into moths, like the larvae of the zhiliao before they shed their shells, are extremely nutritious and rich in protein. Not to mention for human consumption, feeding them to chickens can also improve the chicken's resistance and reduce the possibility of chicken plague or avian influenza. In addition to silkworm pupae, the silkworm excrement produced during the silkworm rearing process, that is, the leftover leaf residue, the excrement of the silkworms, and the several layers of skin shed by the silkworms, are all excellent feeds suitable for livestock. Whether it is feeding chickens, feeding pigs, or feeding fish, Even using it as fertilizer is no problem. Therefore, there are still many benefits of raising silkworms. The fact that it can keep poultry away from diseases is worth promoting. As for the method of raising silkworms, you have indeed never raised them in your previous life, but you have seen your female teacher raise them. You still remember that year you didn't know what wind was blowing. It seemed that raising silkworms as pets suddenly became popular. During that time, the teacher carried a paper box of large white silkworms every day, scaring the girls in the class to hide far away. But you were naturally not afraid of insects, and you also heard the teacher talk about the history of silkworm raising in China. Although you have not actually raised silkworms, you still understand the theoretical knowledge of several steps. In this way, while recalling the method of raising silkworms, you return to the courtyard that was previously used as a papermaking workshop. At this time, the manual equipment inside had been removed, and the original papermaking workers had also gone to the new papermaking workshop. You came to the cleaned-up main room again, waiting to meet the pioneers of silkworm raising in this era. After a while, footsteps were heard outside the door, and then Dashu walked in with a few women. "Chief, this is the leader of the Sang tribe, and the others are her clan members." Dashu led a few people into the main room and introduced you, and at this moment the scene seemed a little depressing. Both sides were looking at each other. Several women were staring at you with wide eyes, and you were also looking at them. These women were wearing the same silk clothes, but just like the first time you went to the Beyond tribe, their leader, like Chang, was also wearing a long robe, while the remaining 3 women were wearing short skirts and tube tops. But at the first sight of their silk clothes, you were stunned. You couldn't tell whether you were disappointed or relieved, because their clothes were not woven fabrics made of silk, but silk wadding products directly stretched from silkworm cocoons. To put it bluntly, they haven't lit up the technology. Tree of silk fabrics. You have heard your teacher talk about this kind of thing. It is not made of silk reeled from complete cocoons, but from the pocket-shaped waste cocoons left by the silkworm pupae after they metamorphose into moths. After soaking in water, they are manually stretched into silk sheets, which is also a raw material for making silk quilts. "Han Chief, I am the leader of the Sang tribe, Chu," the leading middle-aged woman said in a strange-sounding Mandarin, probably just learned recently. "Well, I heard that your tribe is good at raising a kind of insect that forms cotton balls. Did you bring this insect? Can you show it to me?" you asked bluntly. Sang Chu was obviously stunned after hearing your words. She didn't know if it was because she didn't understand or because she felt you were too direct, going straight to the point. At this time, a young woman behind her whispered a few words in her ear. You couldn't understand what she said. It seemed to be their own tribe's dialect. She should be translating for her. However, Dashu, who was standing next to you, also came over and whispered a few words. "Chief, the one talking to her is translating. That woman came to work here very early and then went back to bring their leader back. Their leader doesn't seem to have been here for long." You nodded in understanding. It turned out to be like this, but it was also normal. Sending unimportant people to explore the way first, most tribes would do this. "Han Chief, don't you mind if we continue to raise insects?" This time, it was Sang Chu who spoke first, but she didn't use Mandarin, but their unique dialect. However, the young woman just now translated simultaneously in Mandarin, which solved the communication problem. "Me? It's hard to say whether I mind or not now, unless you can let me see that kind of insect with my own eyes. But I think it's not a big problem, as long as it's not a harmful insect." While you were talking, you were thinking, if raising silkworms is okay, as long as you don't suddenly take out an 8-legged spider that can spin webs, then everything is fine. Sang Chu was very happy to hear your words. It seemed that this Han chief did not reject the beliefs and lifestyles of foreign tribes. Well, this should be a broad-minded and generous leader. No wonder there are rumors that he can lead many tribes. Of course, our cloud insects, Yun Chong, are outside. We can bring them in for the chief to see. These insects are very good and will not harm people. They only eat leaves and can also be eaten by people. They are not poisonous. Sang Chu said happily, and then asked the other two women to go to the yard to get something. Half a minute later, 2 vine boxes woven with fine gold silk vines were placed on the table beside you. Why aren't they moving? Seeing the more than 20 fat, large white insects in the box, you finally felt relieved. They were indeed sangkan. They had round bodies, the length of a little finger, and were white with some spots, basically the same as the sangkan you saw in your previous life. But at this time, these silkworms were lying motionless there, looking like they were dead. Chief, I brought these when I came. They are sleeping. When they wake up, they will shed their skin like snakes. Every time they shed their skin, they will grow a little bigger. But these ones will not survive. There are no leaves for them to eat here, and they will starve to death when they wake up. Sang Chu introduced to you. Oh, you said they are not poisonous and will not harm people, right? You asked again. Of course, I grabbed these insects directly with my hands. They don't bite at all. They only eat leaves and can also be eaten by people. If you don't believe me, look. Just remove the head and you can eat it directly. The middle-aged woman named Sang Chu took out a plump, large white insect from the vine box, bit off the insect's head with her front teeth and spit it out, and then put the whole insect into her mouth and chewed it. In an instant, the insect's juice exploded between Sang Chu's teeth, making Dashu swallow hard. He didn't know if he was scared or greedy. You. WTF. What the hell do you mean by just removing the head and you can eat it? What about the second half of the sentence? Crunchy, chicken-flavored, 8 times the protein content of beef. Honestly, did you transmigrate? Did you also watch a show called Man vs. Wild? Your mind was racing with complaints. The scene in front of you looked just like Bear Grylls eating insects, and even the words were so similar. If he hadn't been so sure that the woman in front of him was a native, he might have really tried to match a secret code with her. Wait, why not try? Cough. Odd changes stay the same, huh? Sang Kyo had just swallowed the insect in her mouth, and then she and the 4 other people in the room looked at you with 5 blank faces, not understanding what nonsense you had just said. Cough. It's nothing. I can agree to let you continue to raise this kind of insect after you join the Han tribe. And if you raise them very well, I also hope you can teach the whole Han tribe to raise this kind of insect. Do you think that's okay? Your secret code was not answered, and you were extremely embarrassed, but on the surface, you were still as steady as an old dog, continuing to negotiate with the other party about the matter of raising silkworms. Is this true? Chief, you agree that we continue to raise cloud insects, and you want us to teach the whole Han tribe to raise cloud insects? The 4 women and Dashu in the room looked at you again with shocked expressions. Chief, we, Dashu, just wanted to speak, but you directly interrupted him. Yes, I agree that you continue to raise insects, and in fact, I know this kind of insect. Its name should be pronounced can in Mandarin, and there is not only one kind of can there are also some other colors. For example, the likan that likes to eat chestnut leaves. That kind of silkworm is green all over, with yellow spots, and there are many protruding short spines on the epidermis, which looks no different from a caterpillar. And this kind of all-white, smooth, and spineless epidermis that likes to eat mulberry leaves is the sangkan. But no matter what kind they are, they all follow a characteristic, that is, they eat day and night, sleep after eating, shed their skin and grow up after waking up, and then continue to eat. After 4 or 5 times like this, they will grow into a mature body and finally spin silk to form a cocoon to wrap themselves up and become a pupa. After another 3 or 4 days, they will bite open the cocoon layer and drill out from inside, becoming a moth with wings. But these moths can't live for long. They will quickly form a pair to lay eggs and then die immediately, until the next year when the eggs hatch into new silkworms. Am I right? Everyone stared wide-eyed, looking at you in surprise as you spoke eloquently. Han tribe chief, how do you know this so clearly? This is something that not all clan members in our Sang tribe know, but you said it all correctly, as if you created it yourself, Sang Chu said with admiration and shock. Why would I create this thing? It looks disgusting. Besides, I'm not the creator.
However, it's time for this well-liked part. It's time to show off. You slandered in your heart, straightened your face, and solemnly pretended. Because I am the Son of Heaven, there are really not many things in this world that I don't know. In
an instant, you received a room full of little stars. Dashu Sangchu, the translator girl. Ooh, the chief is so amazing. Cough, by the way, how do you raise silkworms? Can you tell me? I'll see if it's the same as the method I know. Feeling that the atmosphere in the room was getting more and more awkward, you couldn't help but ask. It seemed that you had overdone it this time. Oh, it's like this. We collect their eggs a few days after the insects that have turned into flying insects die. Then, after about 1 lunar cycle, when the leaves grow again, those eggs can break open by themselves. Very small black insects will crawl out, and then we put these small black insects on the tree, and they can eat the leaves themselves and go through the process from life to death again. From the time these insects crawl out of the eggs to the time they turn into flying insects and lay eggs again, it takes about 50 sunrises and sunsets. We raise them on the tree, and we can collect 2 silkworm cocoons before the snow falls. Sang Chu answered seriously after hearing your question. You nodded. As far as you know, this method of letting silkworms feed on tree leaves on trees should be a semi-artificial, semi-open breeding method. If it is converted to a fully artificial breeding method, then the output and quality can be greatly improved. For example, semi-open breeding is to manually put silkworm seeds on the tree and let them feed on the leaves themselves. But insects have no intelligence, they will definitely eat them all up first. But with full artificial breeding, mulberry trees can be planted on a large scale, and mulberry leaves can be picked reasonably by humans so that there are leaves on the trees all year round, so that silkworms will not go hungry all year round. The second is to organize manpower to collect silkworm seeds, changing the twice-a-year breeding to 4 times a year. As long as the hatching time of silkworm seeds is staggered, silkworms, which only live for more than 50 days, can be raised continuously throughout the year. In this way, it is easy to harvest silkworm cocoons 4 times a year. After all, one seasonal cycle in this world is 14 months, 2 months more than on Earth. Well, actually, I think the method you use is not good. If you can fully collect and raise them artificially, that is, collect the silkworms and manually pick leaves to feed them, they should be raised better. This way, you can also rotate the leaf-picking area so as not to eat up all the mulberry trees. And there is also a problem with the way you use silkworm cocoons. According to the method I know, you should dry the cocoons immediately after they are formed, kill the pupae inside, and then put the cocoons in hot water to boil. Pull out the silk that makes up the cocoons, combine several strands into one, and spin it into silk thread that can be used to weave cloth, and then weave the silk thread into silk, that is, silk fabric. Do you know what weaving is? You asked at the end. This weaving I know. That's why I decided to join the Han tribe, because I think the linen and woolen cloth of the Han tribe are very magical, and life here is very good. You don't have to worry about going hungry, and there are solid houses to live in. There are many clan members, and you don't have to be afraid of wild animals and enemy attacks. But, Chief, is silk so messy that it can also be turned into silk thread? I have tried it before, but each time I can only pull out a very short one, not even as long as hair. Also, if the silkworm moths are killed, how can they lay eggs? Wouldn't it be impossible to continue raising them in the future? Sangchu first happily stated the reason why she wanted to join the Han tribe, and then questioned the method of raising silkworms you mentioned. She was very logical, and was a smart person. No wonder she could become the leader of a tribe. No, you are wrong. As far as I know, silk is the most tidy thing, but hemp fiber and wool are the shortest and most messy. Haven't you heard the phrase, a mess of hemp? Oh, right, you definitely haven't heard of it, cough. You coughed to cover up your embarrassment, and then continued. According to what I know, a silkworm cocoon is actually made of a single silk thread wrapped around it. The silk used in a complete silkworm cocoon is 700 to 1500 meters long. It is completely composed of a single thread, just like a naturally wound bobbin. But you said that the silk you pulled out was very short. That's because the silkworm moth had already bitten the cocoon and drilled out from inside. So I said that you should kill the pupa inside before the silkworm moth comes out, so that you can keep a complete silkworm cocoon, and you can get a continuous silk thread. In addition, you said that after killing the silkworm pupae, there will be no silkworm moths to lay eggs, and it will not be possible to continue raising them in the future. Actually, this is easy to solve. You don't have to kill all the silkworm pupae. Just leave a batch of well-grown ones and let them pupate into moths and lay eggs. Isn't that enough? This is the same as when we raise pigs and cattle. We need to keep breeding bulls and breeding pigs, and the others are all killed and eaten. As long as there are breeding animals, they can continue to reproduce. Your eloquent explanation made the eyes of Sang-Q and the others light up. Yes, why didn't they think of it? No wonder this young man can become the leader of such a large tribe. He is really an unparalleled wise man. It is said that the Han tribe can develop into this way because of the wisdom of this leader. Chief, I understand. What should we do next? Also, I haven't seen the spinning and weaving of the Han tribe yet. I don't quite understand it yet, and I don't know how to raise the artificial breeding you mentioned. Sang-Chu finally asked. Well, about this question. How many clan members are there in your tribe, and how many are here now? There are more than 170 people in total, and there are 28 here now. Well then, let's do this. You first take a few people back, don't rush to come over. After all the silkworms raised in this batch have laid eggs, bring the silkworm cocoons and silkworm seeds, by the way, and the seeds of the mulberry tree. Do you know what they are? You arranged? I know there are small red fruits on that kind of tree, and there are seeds in the fruit. We have also collected a lot, Sang-Chu replied. Yes, that's it. That kind of fruit is called mulberry, Sang-Shen. Remember to bring the seeds, mulberry tree seeds, silkworm cocoons, and population. As long as you bring these, other useless things can be discarded. When you get here, the Han tribe will allocate new living materials to you. Dashu, you need to arrange a team of people to go back with them, responsible for the safety of the migration, and also to help them relocate. Bring some cattle and horses. After picking them up, don't station them here. Send them directly to Hanyang City. I will make other arrangements. You gave orders to the two of them in an orderly manner. Dashu also looked at you. This was not the first time he had done such a thing, so he naturally understood the meaning of the chief's words. The so-called protection and help were true, but there was also the meaning of supervision and urging. Since he had agreed, it would not be so easy to go back on his word. I understand, Chief. I will go back tomorrow to arrange the relocation of the whole tribe. But aren't we moving here? What is Hanyang City? Is it far from here? Sang-Q first agreed to move the whole tribe, and at the same time she was wary of the Hanyang City you mentioned. Hanyang City is the first city of our tribe, and it is also the most developed. The entire textile industry of the Han tribe is in Hanyang City. If you want to learn weaving, you can only go there. Don't worry, it's not very far from here. It takes half a day to get there on horseback, 1 day by cart, and 7 sunsets on foot. When the time comes, I will let Dashu send you there. If I am not here, you can find him if you have anything. Yes, I understand, Chief. Then I will go back and prepare. After hearing your explanation, Sang-Chu was relieved and immediately took her leave to go back and prepare. However, just as you had just resolved the matter of the Sang tribe, Shuda rushed over from outside holding a roll of animal skin letters. Chief, something happened. Yufu's caravan was attacked, and someone in the caravan died in battle. Keep your voice down. Come inside and talk. You are a soldier. Why are you panicking over such a small matter? You, who had just relaxed, felt a tightness in your heart when you heard Shuda's shout, but you still pretended to be calm. No matter how panicked others were, you had to remain calm. Once the leader lost his composure, the people below would be even worse off. You understood this principle. Oh. Shuda blushed at your words, realizing his gaffe, and responded softly as he ducked into the room. Were you shouting like this all the way here? Give me the letter. You took the animal skin letter from Shuda and asked him with a sidelong glance. No, Chief. I sent you the letter as soon as I received it and saw that something was wrong. I didn't shout on the way, and even the remaining warriors don't know. Shuda quickly explained. Well, that's more like it. In the future, when you encounter such a thing, be calm. You are a soldier. If the soldiers below see you in a panic, people who don't know will think that the enemy has reached our doorstep. You reprimanded him while opening the animal skin letter. Yes, Chief, I won't do this again in the future, Shuda quickly promised, but you didn't hear it. Your mind was completely focused on the content of the letter. Chief, the caravan was attacked last night. More than 20 people were injured. 3 died of their injuries, and the salt vehicles, cattle, horses, and sheep were robbed. Tsk, which night was last night? I don't know when it happened. You muttered softly, secretly deciding to put the specific date on the agenda when they came back. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know the communication time. But according to the approximate distance with the speed of the giant eagle, it should be at most a little more than a day. That is to say, the caravan's attack happened the night before yesterday, you judged. Didn't Yufu say last time that he sent a zonki of heavy cavalry to escort the grain seeds back? Where has the convoy reached? You suddenly thought of Yufu's division of troops, and you didn't know if this incident was caused by insufficient troops. Wait, no, the grassland is so big. How did the enemy know the location of our caravan's encampment? This must be the enemy tracking them. So did the enemy already know that Yufu had divided his troops? If this is the case, the convoy transporting grain seeds is in danger. Chief, don't worry. We have already received this group of people. They entered the mountains from the canyon some days ago and are now gathered at the Lu tribe, staying with our soldiers who are supervising the relocation of the Lu tribe. They should have returned with the Lu tribe by now, and the chief will be able to see them in a few days. Dashu immediately answered your doubts, which also relieved you a lot. Fortunately, the grain seeds returned safely. This was related to the Han tribe's strategy of marching towards places lacking rivers next year, especially the high-yield and drought-resistant crop like corn, which was absolutely the most important thing, you thought to yourself. Chief, what exactly happened? The caravan was attacked by the enemy at night? Dashu also asked in surprise, frowning. He couldn't understand who had the guts to pull the tiger's whiskers of the Han tribe. Moreover, that was the most important part of the Han tribe. Now, every time they traded with the grassland tribes, they made a lot of money. This time, someone actually attacked the caravan. He didn't know how angry the chief would be. However, you were unusually calm in front of him, and the slight frown on your brow indicated that you seemed to be thinking about the problem. Yes, Yufu said in the letter that the night before yesterday, a group of cavalry launched a surprise attack. At night, it is not clear how many people there were. It was dark at night and they couldn't see clearly. But it should not be less than 500 people, you said. Then didn't they arrange for people to stand guard? The sound of more than 500 cavalry running should not be small, right? If it were me, I could hear it from far away. Shuda also interjected. Didn't you read what was written in the letter? You frowned and asked, I just read the beginning. I saw that the matter was more important, so I sent it to the chief. First, Shuda blushed and scratched his head. You, go back and learn to read and write with Shuya. You can't even be worse than your own soldiers. You pointed at Shuda and directly exposed his lie. Anyway, there were only the 3 of them here, so you weren't afraid of losing his face. Yes, Chief, I know, Shuda quickly promised. Well, your question just now was unnecessary. Before Yufu joined the Han tribe, he traveled outside all year. Round. Would he not know to leave people on guard? And he did better than you think. Their temporary camp for the night was specially arranged, with all the vehicles arranged to form a temporary wall. If there was no such vehicle wall, think about what the consequences would be. When you are sleeping in the middle of the night, maybe the enemy's cavalry will step on your face. You analyzed for the two of them. Then, since they discovered the enemy's whereabouts in advance and had temporary fortifications, how could there be casualties? Our weapons are not worse than others. This time it was Dashu who raised the question, and he didn't quite understand what was going on. This group of enemies should have been tracking them for a long time, and Yufu suspects that the Shin tribe is behind it, because this group of enemies seems to be very familiar with them, and the purpose of the night attack is also very clear. Should be to rob things, not to kill people. The most important thing is that they were actually prepared for the heavy cavalry of the caravan. There were not many people in the whole team who used bows and arrows. Most of them used spears, Tu Mao, with greater power, and they were spears made of bamboo poles. Except for the Shin tribe, I can't think of anyone else on the grassland who can provide this kind of thing in large quantities, so I also agree with Yufu's point of view. It should be the Shin tribe who holds a grudge, so they are making trouble behind the scenes. You continue to analyze for them. Spears? Can cavalry use spears? This is impossible, right? Shuda was seriously skeptical. After all, his subordinates had cavalry, and he himself could ride a horse, but he couldn't understand how to use a weapon like a spear on a moving horse. You also gestured on the spot. The attack range of a weapon like a spear is relatively short, generally around 30 meters. Those who are strong and know throwing skills can throw up to 70 meters at most. But the enemy does not have saddles and stirrups, so even if everyone is a strong man, they cannot exert all their strength. In addition, the horse is bumpy and it is difficult to maintain the movement. It is a genius to be able to throw 20 meters. But can this thing be used? Throwing backward requires twisting the body backward and turning your head to throw. Can you throw a spear in this posture? It is also difficult to exert force to the side, but you can't go forward. The front is the direction of the horse's movement. If you throw it 20 meters, you will rush up on your horse before it lands. That is not attacking the enemy. That is suicide. Therefore, the most likely way to throw is to line up in a vertical row, like a battle line, and attack from the two sides in front of you. Therefore, this mode cannot be resisted on the frontal battlefield, and can only be used to sneak attack on the two wings. This should be a tactic specially developed to deal with the heavy cavalry of the Han tribe, because ordinary bows and arrows simply cannot penetrate their armor. But if they get too close, they will be dismembered. So spears, which are powerful, high damage, and have a moderate range, have become their magic weapon to deal with heavy cavalry. However, in fact, it is useless. Although they were facing a night attack by hundreds of cavalry, the enemy's movements had already been discovered by the sentries. In addition, there was a vehicle formation to defend, and Yufu quickly organized the defense. He ordered all 38 heavy cavalry of a Zongqi to put on armor, mount their horses, and stand by. He also let the remaining 60 or so people in the Daida caravan hold longbows to defend against the enemy. Although compound bows have not yet been issued, the Han tribe actually has a lot of longbows, because they are too simple to make, so ordinary members of the caravan can also be assigned one. Then, the enemy's cavalry formed two columns, holding burning spears, shouting loudly, and attacking from both sides of the camp like two fire snakes. Seeing that the other party was all holding torches, Yufu knew what these people wanted to do. They must have known that their caravan had grain seeds and a large amount of cloth, and they wanted to burn them all. As for what the other party wanted, it must be hard currency such as white salt and livestock, so Yufu naturally could not let the other party succeed. After seeing the direction of the enemy's movement with the help of the firelight, Yufu immediately ordered the heavy cavalry to attack. The cavalry, this type of soldier, only has an advantage when running. Standing still can only be a target for the enemy. He remembered very clearly that this was what you had said. It's like when your own Air Force base is attacked by an enemy bomber group. The first thing to do is to let all the fighters take off. The weapons that are originally flying in the sky can only be beaten when they are lying on the ground. This principle is the same. After sending out all the cavalry, they soon saw riots in the two fire snakes in the distance. Many bright red, Snake scales lost their color. Every time one disappeared, it meant that an enemy holding a fire spear fell from his horse. However, the difference in strength between the enemy and our side was still too great. Each column of the opponent had nearly 300 people, but the caravan had a total of 2 zongqi of heavy cavalry, and half of them were divided by yufu to escort the grain seeds back. The remaining 38 people had to be divided into 2 squads to intercept the enemy's double-line formation separately. The huge difference in numbers could not be compensated by the advantage of weapons and equipment. Those who understand cavalry warfare know that when the 2 sides charge, they can only charge face to face. The most taboo thing is to cut through the opponent's horse group horizontally, because it is easy to be trampled to death by the high-speed charging horse group. Of course, it is not that horizontal cutting is impossible, but the casualties will definitely be very large. Therefore, this small force of the Han tribe naturally cannot use suicidal attacks. They can only intercept as much as possible from both sides of the enemy column, trying to disrupt their formation and prevent them from attacking. But even so, there were still many enemies who broke away from their interception and continued to charge towards the camp. The distance was gradually shortening. Some of the enemies who were lucky enough to escape the death charge of the heavy cavalry were seriously injured. Some were covered in blood, some were their own, and some were their brothers. Narisong was one of them, the leader of their snowfield wolf tribe. He was tempted by a group of people who sold bamboo. An old man among them told them that this Han tribe caravan had a large amount of white salt and incredibly magical vehicles, and only this tribe had them. As long as they could rob them, the old man would only want one vehicle. If they could rob the opponent's weapons, they would also get a set. He was willing to tell the leader the location of this caravan. Undoubtedly, they definitely reached a deal, but he didn't know whether the leader would share the spoils with the old man after the robbery, and the result was likely to be no sharing. After all, their snowfield wolf had robbed the group of people who sold bamboo, and more than once. Maybe that was why the old man came to them. Originally, Narisong thought it was a very ordinary looting. As long as he tore open the fence of the herdsman like a snowfield wolf, the fat sheep inside would be at their disposal. However, he was wrong. The entire snowfield wolf was wrong. The fence of the Han tribe caravan was too strong. It was made of a circle of monsters made of wood, which seemed to be the vehicle in the bamboo seller's words. They didn't even know how to operate them, but according to the information provided by the old man, there must be a lot of good things in those vehicles. The leading squad leader issued an attack order. Narisong held a burning spear and followed the clan members in front of him to charge forward. They were in the second echelon, and they all used flaming spears, while the 2 echelons before and after them used bows and arrows. He didn't know why the captain arranged it this way, but it didn't matter. Since someone was taking the lead, he just had to follow, and it could also reduce the danger of being shot. He leaned down and lay on the horse's back, hoping that the opponent's arrows would not hit him. However, after the team charged forward for a while, he did not find an arrow shot from the opposite side, only screams that were louder than the last, and they were from his own clan members. "What's going on?" Narisong straightened up and looked forward, but he saw a scene that he would never forget. He saw a small team of devils riding black horses charging from the opposite side. They had no bows and arrows, and they looked like humans, but they were covered in black scales. The scales were black and shiny, reflecting light even in the moonlight. Everyone had the same golden face, looking like the twin babies of the next tribe, but there were more of them. Those devil warriors held horizontally the blade-like weapons that could reflect the snow light. All objects that came into contact with them, whether people or horses, were cut in half. Even Narisong's comrades in front of him were no exception. When the devil on the opposite side charged over on horseback, he watched his comrade's head fly up. At the critical moment, he instinctively shrank his neck and only felt a chill on his scalp. That's right. I can still feel the cold. I'm not dead, ha 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 ha, that's great. Just when Narisong was lying on the horse's back, touching his head that had become a crew cut. Rejoicing that he had escaped a decapitation, several more devil warriors came one after another, scaring him to lie tightly on the horse's back and not dare to raise his head. But he didn't know what was going on with the last guy. The long knife was actually held diagonally downward. As a result, when he passed by him, it happened to scratch his thigh, cutting a cut at that time, and the skin and flesh were torn, which was very scary. The intense pain almost made Narisong drop the spear in his hand and fall from the horse, but he knew that if he fell off the horse at this time, he would definitely die a miserable death. The pain quickened at his nerves, but it also made him feel that he was still alive. He held the spear tightly. Those monsters made of wood seemed to be right in front of him. Warriors, take out your weapons and kill these enemies in front of you. The spoils will be yours. Charge! This was not the squad leader's voice, Narisong thought. This was a deputy, maybe the squad leader was already dead. But it didn't matter. He was already injured, and he didn't know if he could get better. Maybe he would never have such a chance again. It would be good to finish this one first. He raised the spear in his hand, but unexpectedly found that there was no one in front of him. Where did they go? Narisong tried to open his eyes wide, but he felt that his vision was getting more and more blurred. He could only see some bonfires burning in the defensive circle formed by the convoy in front, but he couldn't see a single figure in the circle. Did those people turn into the devils just now and run away? Everyone pay attention. The enemy is coming soon. Don't let them get close to the convoy. Pay attention to firing to both sides. All raise your bows, level shot. Yufu stood at the gap between two four-wheeled wagons and gave orders to the remaining members of the caravan. Because it was night, the vision was not very clear, and the enemy was riding in two columns. This situation was very troublesome. If it was an attack in a dense formation during the day, then Yufu could completely use the range advantage to attack first according to the array volley you used before. However, it was night now, and the enemy's formation in a column made the frontal spread area smaller, and the hit rate of long-range volley was very low. In addition, the vision was blocked in the dark, so Yufu made a decisive decision and ordered all the archers to hide on both sides of the vehicle formation, preparing to attack suddenly when the enemy rushed to within 100 or 200 meters, which could greatly increase the probability of hitting. This was something that couldn't be helped. When a small number of people faced a large number of people, they could only do this. With Yufu's shout of level shot, more than 60 people immediately flashed out from both sides of the convoy. They lined up on both sides and raised their bows and released arrows at the same time. At this time, the cavalry of the Snowfield Wolf had just broken through the interception of the heavy cavalry. Seeing that they were about to rush to the face of the Han tribe caravan, a faint sound of bowstrings being released sounded, followed by the swishing sound of arrows passing by their ears. The first echelon rushing in the front immediately had people and horses hit by arrows and fell to the ground, and then they were ruthlessly stepped on by their teammates who followed closely behind. At this time, no one could stop the horse. They could only brave the opponent's arrows and continue to charge. If they stopped now, they would only become targets within the opponent's range. Quick spears drive away those cattle and sheep. The others find, Yufu personally shot and killed a leader of the other party who was shouting loudly. Facing the enemy who had already rushed to the front, he immediately let half of the members who were not very good at archery pick up spears. Those were the cavalry lances that were inconvenient for the heavy cavalry to carry. At this time, they were used to fight against the enemy's cavalry on foot, which was also a good weapon. However, the number of enemies was still too many. The opponent's spear group kept throwing out flaming spears, instantly igniting several vehicles full of animal skins and wool. The fire soon burned fiercely, illuminating a large area around, and the whole camp was filled with the smell of burnt protein. But just when Yufu thought that the enemy would start a massacre, most of the enemy's forces interspersed into the middle of the camp and the livestock, shouting loudly to drive the livestock, leaving only a small number of troops to set fires everywhere in the camp. restraining the caravan from sending troops to rescue. Yufu quickly figured out the opponent's intentions. This group of ignorant barbarians only recognized livestock, but burned the more valuable cloth and fur to attract their attention. Maybe this was the difference in values. In the eyes of their nomadic tribes, only those living livestock were the most valuable, but those livestock were equally important to the Han tribe, especially large units like cattle and horses. How could he watch the enemy take away the cattle and horses? Yufu immediately let the archers aim at the row of enemies, blocking between the camp and the livestock, trying to break a gap and take back the livestock. But this was still very difficult, because many vehicles around had already caught fire. The Han tribe brought white salt, ceramics, and iron pots, which were not flammable, but now they were all exchanged for livestock and animal skins and wool, and except for living things, the rest were all flammable. But just when Yufu was struggling to divide his troops to put out the fire and retrieve the cattle and horses, the heavy cavalry who had fought around outside finally returned. The mount of the leading Zongqi had been killed in the charge just now, and he himself had fallen heavily. Now the leader had become Wu Yun. He was originally from the grassland, so he naturally knew that these bandits would attack the livestock first, so after killing a round, they didn't come back at all, but took all the remaining cavalry around the periphery of the livestock and blocked the cattle, horses, and sheep that were being driven away. Then another round of killing was inevitable. But there were too many enemies, and they still drove away many livestock. With the withdrawal of the enemy's main force, the enemies harassing the camp also found white salt, and each of them grabbed 2 bags and left. Although Yufu and the others intercepted and killed many of them when they finally left, some of them still escaped. After the fierce battle, only dead bodies and wounded people were left all over the ground, and thick smoke above the camp, like dark clouds, covered the glimmer of dawn in the sky. The heavy cavalry ran back and forth, searching for lost cattle, horses, and sheep. Yufu also led the caravan members to treat the wounded and rescue supplies and vehicles. Fortunately, because all the vehicles were in a state of cattle and vehicle separation when camping at night, the group of enemies who didn't know how to harness and drive vehicles failed to steal a single vehicle. The white salt they robbed could only be put in 2 bags on their own horses, so in fact, the materials robbed by the enemy were not much. The biggest loss was actually those that were burned. Before long, the cavalry, who had been busy for half the night, also returned. Because of their desperate interception, most of the cattle and horses were finally recovered. As for the sheep, compared with the 2, they still chose to retrieve the cattle and horses first. Perhaps sheep are daily food in the eyes of nomadic tribes, but not for the Han tribe. The Han tribe eats grain, but large livestock like cattle and horses are the most important for the Han tribe. After they settled the remaining livestock, they had time to gather together to rest, help each other bandage wounds, and comfort those who were seriously injured and dying. The cavalry's attack this time lasted a long time, and the formation was very scattered, often facing a situation of 1 against many. If it weren't for the fact that the Han tribe's cavalry had a full set of horse gear and steel knives, they might not have taken much advantage. But stamina was still a big problem. Although the heavy armor brought defense, it also greatly consumed stamina. Many of the wounded were injured by the opponent's spears and flying stones when they were exhausted. In addition, the most injured were the members of the caravan. They had no armor, no long knives, and could not ride horses to maneuver. They could only rely on vehicles as shelters to fight the enemy. Many of them were injured by the enemy's arrows and spears. The 3 people who were stabbed by spears basically died on the spot. Those who were injured by arrows were better off. Regardless of whether they could be cured, at least there was a chance of rescue. Although the Han tribe suffered heavy losses this time, the enemy did not gain much advantage. Judging from the casualties alone, the snowfield wolf left hundreds of corpses and wounded, and the materials they took away were mainly sheep, with very few cattle and horses. Even the cattle and horses they took away were not as many as the mounts left by the dead warriors. It can be said that this trip was a bloody loss. The remaining group responsible for harassing the camp and robbing White Salt did not gain any advantage either. They couldn't take away the whole vehicle, and the amount each person could carry was limited. Although they took some, it was not as much as the warriors who died in this battle. To sum it up, they didn't take anything away except for some sheep, which can be said to be a loss to the extreme. However, Yufu did not want to give up just like that. You know, sheep don't run as fast as horses. Where can they go with a large flock of sheep? Maybe they can still catch up if they chase now. If they are beaten and don't fight back, how can they avenge the dead clan members? And how can they explain to their brothers below